It's the start of hour number 3 here on Sports Talk. Welcome back, everybody. Steve Kaplow, it's with you as we take you up till Chihuahuas and Oklahoma City. The Dodgers in town. Looking forward to having game 2 of that 6-game series with us. But before we get to talking to Tim Haggerty and Chihuahuas baseball, I want to talk a little UTEP softball. That's what we have right now. TJ Hubbard is the head coach of the UTEP Miners softball team, and he joins us here on the program. Coach, welcome back. Good to have you here via Zoom, and looking forward to what should be a fun conversation for us. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for inviting me over. Happy to be here.
You've been busy. A lot going on right now. Signing players, looking still to complete the coaching staff. I know there's a lot on your plate here. This is supposed to be vacation time in the summer, Coach, but hard to vacation when you've got so much happening.
Well, I think that's a little bit misleading. Most softball coaches, baseball coaches as well, the summertime is the busiest time. You know, all the kids are playing tournaments to go see, and for us, trying to land an assistant coach as well. So we got a lot on our plate, but you know what? I'll take this over last summer. So bring it on. I'm happy to be doing it. Just be thankful for the opportunity to be out and recruit.
No doubt about it. And then people can ask you, well, how was UTEP? And you can say, well, I arrived here and COVID hit. So it's kind of difficult. It's almost like it put the whole college sports world on hold for a year.
Yeah, it was difficult, trying to come in and be tasked with rebuilding a program, and you're here for 2 months and they tell you got to go back home and shut the door and stay inside. And that's not the ideal situation. I think we've made the most of it up to this point. But once they released the dead period and recruiting opened up, we hit the ground running.
Good for you. Now, by the way, before we get started, when is vacation for you? When do you actually get to take a little time off?
Usually in December. Usually as soon as the semester's over in December, and we get a couple of weeks, and then January 2nd, 3rd, 4th rolls around, and we're back on the diamond.
So this is like a 50-week out of the year job, is what you're telling me right now.
For the most part, yes.
That is tough. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm more impressed with you now than before this interview started when I hear about how often that work is, what your life is like and your work schedule. But I got to ask you now, I look at UTEP softball over the years historically. And when I look at why this team has had such a hard time getting to the point where they can compete with the best teams in Conference USA on a year-to-year basis, I always pointed at pitching. And it seems like we've seen some great offensive teams at UTEP, but for whatever reason, it has been very difficult to have 2 or 3, or let's even start with 1 really good starting pitcher on the staff. And I'm going to ask you, since now you've been doing this a couple of years here in El Paso, how come it is so difficult to get and recruit big arms to go along with all these great bats we've seen?
Traditionally, just in the experience that I had rebuilding different programs in different parts of the country, the hardest part is just kind of the historical nature of what the program's seen. So if you've hit a dry spell, 6, 7, 8 years of not having consistent pitching or high level pitching, it's really tough to break that trend till you get a new head coach, maybe a new staff in, maybe create a little bit newer level of attraction to some of those kids. I was fortunate enough that the time I spent in North Texas and having the connections I did within the state, was able to land a few kids as soon as I arrived. And that's been the name of the game for UTEP, is just that the pitching has been at a position where it hasn't been able to get them over the hump. Quality, but not necessarily upper elite, or at least upper level of the conference to win a conference division or even a championship. So I'm excited with what we brought in.
I don't blame you. Now, let me ask you this. Does the ball move differently here than it does in other parts of the league because of the elevation? Do we see that same effect here with softball?
Yeah, absolutely. So being here, a little bit drier climate, less humidity, a little bit higher elevation, and in the wind, obviously that springtime season for us, there's chances of 34, 40 mile an hour plus winds. So the environment here, the ball definitely travels, and it travels very, very well. It seems to be to the tune of home runs and extra base hits. So it's definitely a factor compared to UAB or Southern Miss or even in North Texas. So there's a little bit of a disadvantage on the pitching side of it being here.
Are you allowed to use a humidor the way they do with the Chihuahuas and other major league and minor league baseball teams?
I wish.
Okay. So we haven't, so,
Yeah.
so if, because I would always wonder, what could you be able to take those softballs and just even the playing field out? And I'm curious, is that a subject you've ever even brought up to the league and said, hey, could we put a humidor in at UTEP and just try and keep the balls from jumping out as quickly as they do?
Well, I think the biggest difference, I don't know if it have the same effect, just the composition of the internal components of the ball
Yeah.
aren't the same. So it doesn't have that effect on it. But man, if you want to do the research on it, I'm happy to let's set it up and try it. If it helps save a couple 15, 20 home runs.
You know what I would love to do, TJ? I would love to see if the Chihuahuas could let us, as an experiment during the off season, use their humidor and try out with some softballs and just use them in BP and see if there is a legitimate effect of keeping the balls from jumping or from leaving the yard as quickly as they do. Because if you find that it actually works on softballs like it does on baseballs, maybe we've got something here.
Yeah, I mean, let's try to put something together. That'd be fun. And if it works out, we'll make you the director of operations for softball, performance. So
That's another job title I need right now in my resume. I like that. TJ Hubbard with us, head softball coach for the UTEP Miners. All right, tell us a little bit about the big news yesterday and finding Kaylee Hewitt, who looked like a really good, solid freshman at Virginia Tech. She put up great numbers. I guess she was battling injuries last season, so she didn't play. And now she finds herself a minor and really looking like the best young arm we've seen around here in a while.
Yeah, so Kaylee's originally an Eastern New Mexico kid, so grew up in that Carlsbad, Artesia area until she's about 13, 14. Parents relocated to Tennessee and originally committed to University of Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they had the coaching change, then changed her mind and went to Virginia Tech. Had a very, very promising freshman campaign, cut short due to COVID. And then, coming back this year, battled a few things, kind of getting back on the diamond. I still think, in terms of what we're looking for and what we need, she's a super high value target, prospect for us. Her ability and experiences at that level will be very welcomed here to El Paso. So she's a kid, at least in my mind, has the capabilities of going into a 3-game series and winning 2 or 3 against Conference USA opponents and do that week in and week out.
That's huge. That's all you need right now is somebody like that, especially if she could become a top of the rotation starter for you for the next 3 to 4 seasons, because I guess she'll even get that extra year for COVID, right? So she'll be a sophomore, but if she likes it here and doesn't and keeps producing, you could ultimately have her for 4 years.
Absolutely.
That's great. Now, you've also recruited some youngsters as well, high school talent, some pitching that you've identified, and also hoping that they can help with that rotation this upcoming season.
Yeah, we have 2 true pitchers coming in, Annika Laterio and Aaliyah Alarcon. Those 2 kids, for the most part, are kind of day-to-day, everyday type pitchers. We have Kaylin Jackson. She's more of kind of a spare pitcher, utility kid, plays middle infield. She can throw as well. So those 3 individuals coming out of high school have the experience, they have the tools. Annika Laterio, we got to see both of them last weekend in Colorado. Both of them threw very, very well. I'm excited about the promise of them, and knowing that we have a young lady like Kaylee Hewitt coming in that can, kind of burden the bulk of the innings, allows those kids to grow at a proper pace, and their development won't be as sped up.
Perfect situation for you in Conference USA with the Miners. How many really good pitchers do you need to roll them out and be effective over a 3-game series?
I think just with the level of the offense across the country, not just Conference USA, but the level that the offenses are playing at now, you for sure need a minimum of 3. Four I'd feel comfortable with, but it would be hard to go into a 3-game series against a high potent offense with anything less than 3. You would have your hands full.
Tell me this much. Last season, I looked at the starting pitching and I looked at the ERAs and the hits allowed and just everything about it. And it was a rough year. And you had some young arms that, when you look at their bios, were dominant, were terrific in high school, but really had a tough time adjusting from high school to college. You tell me, what is the biggest change that these players face when they go from being such a dominant prep player to now playing for UTEP or any school right now in Division I?
I think the easiest comparison, I guess, is in high school you're probably facing 3 hitters out of a group of 9 in the lineup. 1, 2, and 3, and then 6 through 9 are non-college athletes or they're just not great hitters. You get to the college level and it's 1 through 9. You may have one kid in the lineup that you can take a break on, but now you're facing 8 hitters instead of 9, or 3, I should say, in a group of 9. It's a lot harder to navigate through that over a 5, 6, 7 inning period. So our kids have realized, I think with this last year, realized how important it is to increase their skill set, increase their development, and make sure they can navigate themselves. I mean, if you can get, at least in college softball, if you can get with your starter through the 5th inning, you're in good shape. But a lot of these kids are finding out they can maybe only get through the 3rd and 4th. And now you have to call through the bullpen. And if you're doing that early, first game in a 3-game series, you have a lot of navigating to do to keep some kids off the bases.
Head coach TJ Hubbard of the UTEP softball team with us here on Sports Talk as we continue. You've also been able to dive into the JUCO ranks and recruit players that could help you in the infield, could help you behind the plate. I saw you had a couple of catcher/utility ball players, but tell me a little bit about JUCO recruiting and ultimately able to bring players with a little experience that could come right in and give you a boost here this upcoming season.
I'm a huge fan of junior college players. The kids that go there and play, they're going to get 150, 200 games over 2 years, because they'll play 30 or 40 games in the fall. They're going to get 400, 500 at bats. It may not be against Division I competition, but it's at least collegiate level, competition across the board. They're going to come in with, those kids don't have practice hour requirements. They don't have days off. They travel on vans, not buses. They don't get fed 3 times a day. Those kids come in gritty. They know how to work. They usually don't get, sometimes they'll get a full ride offer, but a lot of times they're probably working a part-time job to pay to go to school. Those kids know the value of being able to get to this level and play. They don't take it for granted. They have a different mindset, a different mentality. And I've always, no matter where I've been, I've always brought in JUCO kids that first year. It's a good transition. If you're looking for instant performance result type kids, JUCO is the way to go.
So tell me about the player you grabbed from Grayson College and also the 2 that are from Odessa College and what they could do for UTEP here, as soon as next season.
Yeah, Cheyenne Stark. She's a New Mexico kid as well. Originally from Farmington, so she's kind of from this part of the country and familiar with El Paso. Actually played 3 years with the COVID year at Grayson. Plays well behind the plate, versatile enough to play shortstop, second, first, third. Good consistent offensive hitter, but her biggest strength is her overhand arm. She's got incredible velo overhand wise, pop time's incredible. Will allow us to slow the running game, at least the stolen base game, down for our opponents. So that's one of the things that'll help the pitching staff out. It's kind of one of those, if you can offset the running game, maybe you can keep the double play in order, maybe get a ground ball and you're out of the inning, as opposed to stealing or bunting and then not having a chance to get that forced double play up the middle. She's going to give us a huge boost in the runners being thrown out game. Mariah Crowell and Hunter Harkrider, both coming from Odessa. Both kids, all 3 of those kids helped lead their team to the World Series this year, National Junior College Tournament. Those kids know how to win. They know what it requires. Offensively, both those kids have the ability to put up 40, 50 RBIs in a season. And both of them can play multiple infield positions. Mariah, or we call her MC, will be able to catch for us as well, give us just another look when Cheyenne's maybe need to break.
So if there's one thing I'm learning from this conversation with you, there's a lot of good talent in the state of New Mexico, and you're being able to find it. They sometimes don't always stay in New Mexico. They'll go other places, but quality softball right now is being played in some of these areas that otherwise people might not even realize right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was one of those parts that I never had recruited New Mexico that much, even in the time when I was in Utah. Wasn't necessarily a destination spot or a spot we were marking on the map. But since I've been here, we've been able to land 4 kids from New Mexico I feel like are very high level players. And looking ahead, there's some solid talent going into the 22, 23, 24 class there.
Are we done recruiting, or is there still more additions coming?
I'm never done with recruiting. It's a full-time 365 days out of the year. So if I feel like there's a kid out there that can help us win, we're going to go after him.
Good. I'm happy that. So we might be having you back on the show soon and talking about new additions is what you're telling me.
Possibly. We're never done. It's never, I don't ever feel like at least at the mid-major level, you never get to a point where you feel like recruiting's done.
How about your coaching staff? How are we looking there?
Doing good. We spent the last 2.5, 3 weeks going through some candidates, been able to interview some folks, feeling good about where we're at. I would say within the next 5, 7, 10 days, we'll have a new coach on staff.
Terrific. Now, I know a lot of fans are excited because they want to see UTEP softball go back to levels that we haven't seen in years. And that's something that I'm sure you still want to deliver. You tell me, this was not an easy job when you first took over. You realize it's not an overnight fix. It's going to take time. Where are you right now in the development process as you try to have the minor program back where it should be?
I think realistically, we're 1 year away. Maybe 2, depending on the health and the growth and development of some of these kids. But I think if we're able to stay healthy, we're able to keep the kids where we need to keep them at. I think this following year, we should be in prime position with the experience and the kids we brought in to go out and compete for at least a division title, if not be in a position to maybe be top of the league across the board.
Coach, I love it. I look forward to having you in our Lubingo studios the next time we see you, but thanks for the time. Looking forward to all these new players, and should be a good year for UTEP softball fans, that's for sure.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing me on. Look forward to talking to you again.